Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you. Atlanta leaders say the city can no longer afford to be a tale of two cities, one thriving and the other left behind. A recent announced neighborhood reinvestment initiative aims to pour more than $5 billion into affordable housing, transit, and infrastructure to bridge the gap, or at least to help bridge that gap. To help us unpack how that works and what it could mean for your neighborhood, we're joined by Emory Associate Professor of Accounting, Yusha Ratcliffe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. When you hear the phrase a tale of two cities, what does that really mean from a financial and equality perspective?
Yeah, it refers to, the haves and the have-nots, right? And so who has it and who doesn't have it. And you always want to level the playing field. For a city to blossom and flourish, you want all people to have access to the right initiatives and the right opportunities all across the city of Atlanta.
You know, when you think about it from a numbers standpoint, what metrics would be used to see if the plan is actually working?
This initiative that the city has is really about the tax allocation districts. And, the city has invested, a lot in them. There are 8 of them that are currently on. 2 of them have already sunset, like the Atlantic Station and the Beltline. But there are 8 others that are currently under consideration. Should we extend them or not? And that's where the city is talking about the $5.5 billion in investment. And so the key, I think, is for us to look at this proposed plan and say, does it make sense for the good of all people in the city of Atlanta? And so the proposal, there are people who are in favor of it and some who are not in favor of it. But the question is, are these 8 neighborhoods on the level that we would want to see? And that is it good for the city as a priority as a whole?
Yusha, when you hear the price tag of this, $5.1 billion as a resident, you go, whoa,
Yes.
That's a lot of money. So typically, where does that come from?
So this is coming from property tax revenues, right? So the way the plan works is that you've got 8 tax allocation districts. And so since the last, 15, 20 years, the city has invested in some of these neighborhoods. And what they've done is it's a bit like planting a garden. You plant a garden, you want to see the flowers bloom and grow. And that's what's been happening. And so the rule on a tax allocation district is that the money should be used in that district for that district. That is the rule. And so now the question is, should we extend this plan, for those districts to keep getting the benefit and for them to go from strength to strength going forward all the way to the year 2055 for the next 30 years? Or is it that we need to take that money and put it in the general coffers of the city so it helps all people of the city of Atlanta and certainly the county and the public schools? So that is the big question. So it is a lot of money, but it's coming from the property tax, revenue increase. And why did that happen? It happened because, it's the old idea, if you build it, they will come. And so if you spotlight a few areas to reimagine and reinvest in the city of Atlanta, then more business will flow in and all of that, and people will come to those places. So therefore, it increases property values and therefore property tax revenue. But the question really is, where should the money best be used? Is it in those areas or is it for the good of the city as a whole?
We got about 45 seconds left here. When you look back at this reinvestment plan, what will it ultimately tell us whether or not Atlanta is truly going to be a tale of two cities or not? What's going to be the growth?
Yes, you want to look at, how much we've invested, what's the return on investment been, right? Mm-hmm. In financial terms, that's basically what it is. If you look at the last few years, they will say $904 million in investment has generated, a good amount of funding, like $11.6 billion in funding, in new development in the city. I'm reminded of the slogan from the city of Atlanta from back when Mayor Shirley Franklin was the mayor. Remember the slogan, and it said, every day is opening day. And that brings a certain energy and enthusiasm and excitement. And I would always say, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if there are pockets of excellence, it's good for the city, it's good for all of us.
All right, an unpiloted aircraft lifting off from southern Japan over the weekend, bringing vital research from Georgia Tech to the International Space Station there. It is in the form of 18 experimented cells, these solar cells, to see if they can hold material, that the material will hold under harsh conditions like that solar power, right, in real time. Dr. Jude Reddy, we talked to her a little while, not long ago, and you helped design these cells, and now they're bound for outer space. He joins us now to talk about the mission. Welcome back to the show.
Chesley, glad to be here.
All right. A little while back in July, in fact, we talked about these cells. I remember it. I remember interviewing you about it, and now it's about to take place. Are you excited at least?
Of course. Anytime you can send something to space, that fulfills childhood dreams for a lot of people around this country and the world in general.
What happens?
Yeah, it's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It launched over the weekend. We expect it to arrive at the space station around noon on Wednesday.
What happened since the last time we talked in preparation for this mission?
Yeah, so we turned over the solar cells at that point to the launch integrator. They packaged it up with their equipment, which is a special solar cell testing apparatus that will be, it's called MISSE, M-I-S-S-E, and that'll be mounted to the exterior of the space station once it arrives. So after traveling to Houston, they packaged it up. It went to Japan, where it actually launched on the newest transfer vehicle. It's larger than their prior transfer vehicle, so it's a pretty substantial spacecraft. It's about the size of a short bus, school bus.
Wow.
A smaller version.
Gotcha. How does it feel to see all this come to fruition, come to taking off and going in outer space?
Well, it's a huge team. It's not just me. I mean, these come from several different researchers here at Georgia Tech. So it's a lot of excitement for everybody. It's space. It's tough. I mean, they haven't actually arrived at the space station yet, so we still got to get them outside, wired up properly, so that we can start collecting data from them. But once that occurs, that's about 6 months worth of exterior exposure. Then we get them back, and then that's what's really fun, is to be able to analyze things that have been to space and come back.
Yeah, you've had multiple experiments fly aboard the International Space Station. What makes this one stand out to you personally?
Yeah, this is our fourth one to the space station. The diversity of the photoabsorbers. So our solar cells, most people think of them as say, a silicon cell. This is an example of one that didn't quite make the ride. We had other ones that are performing, but they look just like this. Those are fun because those are from my friend Ajit. So those are very standard. That's commercial grade stuff, versus these, which are a perovskite-based material, which is a special material that we've known about since the 1800s. But the crystal structure, we didn't really discover that it was useful for solar cells until a couple decades ago. And the gains that we've had since then have been phenomenal. And it's got some really interesting properties once it gets to outer space in terms of surviving the radiation, surviving the higher temperatures, and other aspects. So we're looking forward to that one. We've got other materials too.
I want to know when they're expected to come back, and then what will you be looking for when they get back?
So they'll get to the space station, kind of hang out inside for about a month before it gets outside, and then nominally 6 months outside, and then they'll bring it back in, take another month or so to get it onto the next cargo vehicle that comes down, because not all cargo vehicles can successfully re-enter. Like the one that's taking it up will not bring it back. That burns up upon re-entry, but it'll come back on the Dragon, for instance, SpaceX's vehicle. That could take anywhere to 3 months, just depending on traffic coordination there at the space station. We expect to get them right around this time next year, and we'll be looking at did they get frosted over and change color so that they're not able to absorb the sunlight as much, cracks, delaminations, atomic oxygen attack, which is a type of corrosion that you experience in outer space.
We're looking at a critical shift in childhood health. Yeah, new evidence shows that early exposure to peanuts may help thousands of children avoid one of the most dangerous food allergies. A study published last week in the medical journal Pediatrics found that around 2% of kids here in the United States are estimated to have a peanut allergy. New infant feeding guidance is showing real promise, with allergy rates among children to up to 3 years old drop off by 27%. In Georgia, data shows food allergy diagnoses are among the peanut allergies are among the highest claim line rates in the country. Let's dive into this a little bit more with Brian Vickery. He is with the Emory University and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Do you think we're hitting a real turning point here in how society manages and prevents peanut allergies?
Well, I think that we may be there. I mean, this study provides really promising, but I would consider it preliminary evidence that we may be on the right path. So the background, as you mentioned, is that the guidelines for feeding babies have recently changed based on strong evidence from studies showing that given peanut or even egg to babies early in life dramatically reduces their risk of developing an allergy to those foods. But we still don't know whether these guidelines are really being followed, and then whether they're working to prevent cases in the real world, which was the question this study attempted to address.
What are the biggest misconceptions about peanut allergies that you wish most people would understand?
Well, I think peanut allergy is really common, and it really affects, now we think of 2% of kids, which is, a lot of kids, even though that number seems small. That's 1 in 50 kids, and it's grown a lot over the last, decade or so. But again, coming back to this study, we now think we have important options to prevent the development of peanut allergy by feeding babies early in life. So in this study, the researchers examined health records from large numbers of infants in 3 distinct time periods on either side of the new updated guidelines and compared the rates of food allergy diagnosis before and after the guideline update. Now, it's important to remember that they used a definition of food allergy in the study that was pretty loose and could still include babies that were suspected to be allergic, but where it wasn't actually proven. So they did show that fewer infants were diagnosed with peanut allergy in the period after the guidelines, but interestingly, they also saw significant reductions in the diagnosis of other allergies like milk and fish, which actually, interestingly, weren't included in the guidelines. And in this study, it's important to remember that the researchers couldn't account for the actual consumption of allergen in the diet. So they really couldn't present any evidence that the reduction in diagnoses were caused by eating more of the foods as recommended in the guidelines. That could be the case, but there could be other explanations as well. So ultimately, look, I think it's a good thing that fewer infants are being diagnosed with allergy in the study, but it's a little hard to say why exactly, and we need more research in this area to better understand it.
Do we know what age or around, you say in infants, but what age it started out as, and how would parents introduce that to their children?
Yeah, so it really depends on whether or not the baby has a case of moderate or severe eczema, an itchy red skin rash, which is the most common presentation of food allergy early in life and is the strongest risk factor for the development of allergy. So if the baby has eczema, they really ought to be evaluated early in life, between 4 to 6 months by the pediatrician and maybe by an allergist as well. And that's when we want to get these foods early in the diet. So we're really talking about the first few months of life. Now, if the baby doesn't have eczema, it's still good to get the food in the diet by 6 or 7 months of life, but it's not quite as time sensitive. Those babies that have a significant case of eczema ought to be evaluated early.
Yeah, is that the role that pediatricians and healthcare providers or child care providers should play in preventing these peanut allergies before they start?
Yeah, and I think it's really important that parents understand that this is new guidance, that, for many years before this, we were actually quite cautious about introducing these foods to babies, and we actually used to tell parents to wait, and that older guidance has really been kind of rejected or outdated. Now we have new guidance based on good science. We think diet diversity is good for babies. And this is what the science says. So, babies should be exposed to a wide variety of foods early in life. It's safe. It's easy to do. I always tell my patients, feed the baby maybe like your grandmother fed your mother. It's just feed them foods when they're ready. The baby should eat what the family eats. You don't have to order anything off the internet to do it. You can use real foods, and it's safe and it's good for the baby.
There you go. Is there anything, we got about 30 seconds left here. Is there anything next in the frontier of allergy prevention that gives you hope right now?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the uptake of this guidance. And so we really want to emphasize these messages to parents, to pediatricians, to allergists and others in the community. And we've prepared really easy to follow guidance for parents to learn all about infant feeding if you go to our website at choa.org/foodallergy.
Georgia's Secretary of State is praising a new proposal from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission that would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Brad Raffensperger says Georgia already leads the way with its own verification system, which has flagged more than 1,600 potential non-citizen registrations, and he believes it's time for a nationwide standard. As he put it in a statement released yesterday, this latest step by the EAC signals the beginning of what must become a nationwide constitutional amendment banning non-citizen voting once and for all, he said. But voting rights advocates argue that this kind of rule would make it harder for eligible Americans to register, and they say it could violate federal election law. One of those critics is Fair Fight CEO Lauren Groh-Wargo, who joins us now this morning. Lauren, good to be with you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So we know Georgia already verifies citizenship during voter registration. So what's the real world problem when it comes to expanding that nationally in your view?
So right now, when you register to vote, you make a signature on the federal form that attests that you're a citizen. We don't have undocumented Americans voting in our elections anywhere. This is a false problem, a lie. And so the way I think about this approach here that unfortunately our Secretary of State has signed on to is there's a national push by Friends of Trump to basically tell American citizens and voters, you've got to show your papers to register. So that means the new federal voter registration form that's being contemplated would require the showing of a passport, a birth certificate, or other paperwork that millions of Americans don't have. And so right now today in Georgia, there's a state form and a federal form. You can register on either. So what Raffensperger is talking about is nationally, the Elections Assistance Commission, which is a bipartisan commission meant to help election administrators and help make it easier to vote, is contemplating whether to change the requirements on the federal form to require the show your papers citizenship verification.
If the EAC goes through with this, do you anticipate any legal fight, or are you going to try to put up a fight at all?
I definitely anticipate a larger fight. There's already a fight underway. Just recently, over the past week or so, the comment period, the public comment period on this proposed change nationally closed. There were thousands upon thousands of comments that went in on both sides. And the way the EAC works, it was established in 2002. It's 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And they're going to look at this and see what recommendations they can make. This is a dramatic change on how voter registration would occur in this country. And so absolutely, this change is estimated to disenfranchise tens of millions of Americans who are lawful voters, but don't have the required paperwork. Can you imagine talking to a friend of yours in another state? They don't have a passport. They don't have a real ID. And then they couldn't register to vote. That's too high of a barrier. We don't have a problem of non-citizen voting.
You say you don't have a problem. The Secretary of State, though, says that he flagged 1,600 potential non-citizen registrations. Are you saying that number is false? How do you interpret it?
So look, 1,600 out of 8 million registered voters. Is he saying those voters went ahead and voted as well? There are folks who, small numbers of folks, erroneously register, but very few actually go ahead and vote. When you look at the percentage of the problem here, this is a massive change to voter registration that would impact tens of millions American citizens for a worry about essentially a couple hundred voters in each state. That is not a real problem. That is not a statistical problem. So we cannot be willing to disenfranchise our fellow American citizens for a rounding small number of folks who are erroneously registering and mostly not voting, right? This is a felony if a non-citizen votes. Undocumented Americans are not going to risk that, correct? But what we know is Americans deserve easy access to the ballot.
Lauren, when you talk about disenfranchising, I mean, how exactly might it make it harder for eligible Georgians to register or stay registered when it comes to these federal elections? Is it as simple as just not having access to a birth certificate? I mean, what kind of IDs are we talking about not having access to here?
Yeah, so this is really where the rub is. It's a very good question because there's multiple proposals going around. There was a bill in Congress. There's what's going on at the EAC, and there's been a couple dozen state legislative bills proposed, not yet in Georgia, but we're expecting them to come. Each one of these efforts is part of the Trump world attempt to remake voting. Every effort defines this differently. So one version, for example, would require women whose names have changed, and if they don't have a passport with their married name, they would have to go produce their marriage certificate. That was one version of the bill. I don't know many women, married women, Democrat or Republican, who have easy access to a marriage certificate and are expecting to have to produce that to go register to vote or stay on the rolls. So every one of these proposals has looked a bit different. So that's why we're very cautious and worried that we don't want to go down this path to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Work there continues at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue on one of his most passionate projects. We're talking about his 90,000 square foot ballroom being built on the site of the former East Wing and historic Jacqueline Kennedy Garden. Demolition work began last week, even as formal review by some oversight agencies remained incomplete. The ballroom's capacity is being put at close to 1,000 people. The overall price tag was originally set at $200 million, but now the project's estimate has been raised to roughly $300 million, and it's all paid for with private funds. Let's get into some of the historical perspective on this project with friend of the show, Emory political science professor, Dr. Andrea Gillespie. Andrea, great to see you again. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You know, many of us see the White House as the home for every president since 1800, but how does this project compare to some earlier White House renovations like Truman's or Kennedy's?
Well, this is certainly a big project. I think the larger issue is whether or not the traditional processes for approving this plan have actually been met. And so the law that actually controls this is the 1966 National Historic Preservation Act, which would require that any building in Washington, D.C. of historic value have to go through a review process before you make major changes to it. Now, that bill actually exempts the White House, the Capitol, and the Supreme Court building. And so that's the loophole that President Trump has used to kind of allay the review process. It's a little interesting, right, because the Trumps built a tennis pavilion on the White House property in their first term, and they actually went through the review process. And they're saying that they're going to go through the review process for this ballroom, but it's the idea that they did the demolition first before actually kind of finishing the project. And then there's the idea that when President Trump first proposed this project, he actually said it wasn't going to touch the existing structures at the White House. So I think that both of just the loophole and the fact that the East Wing has been destroyed is actually very jarring to a lot of people.
Yeah, striking images, no doubt, for Americans to see the bulldozers going straight there to the White House and the East Wing. You know, Wall Street Journal editorial writer yesterday, actually, you know, they're on usually right of center. They said that protecting something quintessentially American is patriotism, not politics. That from the Wall Street Journal editorial. Historically, how have presidents balanced the modernization of the White House while also needing to preserve it as a symbolism of democratic public space?
The review process is an important part of that, right? You get public comment on it because it's not your house. I mean, it would be one thing if this were Trump Tower and something that, you know, Donald Trump owned and he wanted to make changes to it. It would be within his prerogative to do so. But he's only a temporary occupant of this house. And so you have to be mindful of the fact that it is the people's house. There are also some questions, architecturally speaking. This renovation is going to be 90,000 square feet. The White House residence is only about 55,000. And so I think there are questions about symmetry and questions about what that would look like and the historic value of having gotten rid of things that are not just historically important, but also functionally important. The First Lady's office is in the East Wing. The theater was in the East Wing. There are all kinds of things that have been lost. And so I think people might be questioning the president making a unilateral decision in this particular case because of functional reasons and then also because of the historic value.
We've heard the White House say, well, I mean, it's privately funded, no taxpayer dollars being used to this. I heard you call it, you know, the people's house as we all know it. But when you counter that with the fact this is privately funded, it's going to be an invitation-only ballroom. What does that what does that do to the idea of the White House being the people's house?
So, I mean, two things. The president doesn't get to live there indefinitely. So you've probably rented before. I've certainly rented before. There's certain things you can't do to somebody else's house, even if you're living there. So I think that there's this general respect for process issue. Then there is the issue of, the private paying for this. There isn't a problem with a public-private partnership per se, but I think that there are questions about whether or not some people are donating to the building of this ballroom if they are attempting to try to curry favor with the administration for policies and kind of favorable attention in terms of things that they want. So I think that, the bigger issue here is about process. Are you doing things properly? It's not that there isn't a need for a ballroom. I think that there is a strong case to be made for that. But President Trump did not go through the right steps to really convince the people that this is the right thing to do, to go through, making sure that it's done in a proper fashion. And so I think that, this isn't just partisanship, that there are real legitimate reasons to kind of question how this has been done, not the fact that there is a ballroom being built.
From sizzling smash burgers to jerk chicken with kick, the Atlanta Hawks and State Farm Arena are serving up a brand new menu that tastes like home with a little ATL flair. Chef G. Garvin is behind it all. He joins us now to dish out how some of this new arena food just went from courtside snack to full-on Southern experience. Welcome, Chef. Great to have you today.
Hey, nice to see you as well.
You've brought some serious flavor to the court this year. What was your vision when reimagining arena food for Atlanta fans?
Well, it starts with Steve Coonan says that we're the largest restaurant in the state. And, working with Levy, we really wanted to do a elevated experience menu so that the Atlanta natives coming out to concerts, ball games, could really enjoy their meal. As you know, nowadays, getting to the arena, there's traffic. When people come and they're hungry, they want to eat well, they want to enjoy a great game. So we wanted to do a great menu to accompany that.
All right, run down some of the highlights that fans will see when they get to State Farm.
Ooh, man, listen. We're going to start with the burgers. We've got the smash burger. That's a classic smash burger, double patty with the butter brioche bun. We've got the barbecue smash burger. We've got the blue cheese bacon smash burger. We got the black bean burger for the vegans. We got a lot of great stuff. We got a chicken Philly cheese, salmon glaze, all kinds of great stuff.
It looks like we're seeing some video here of it too. Is there a milkshake offering? It appears a pretzel.
Yeah,
what
we've
else
got some classic milkshakes that we're going to be making. Giant pretzels, and of course we got the best popcorn in the city. So yeah, we got a lot of great stuff, and we do sushi in the arena, and then going to some of our clubs. We've really done a great job in making sure we heard what the customers wanted and the fans wanted to see.
This is not the kind of arena food that I'm used to seeing. The greasy French fries and the paper plates, and you got the ketchup that you got to squeeze on there. This is a full-on gourmet experience. How much fun did you have making all this?
The Levy culinary team and myself, as the chief culinary officer, we really enjoy what we do. We listen to the fans. We do a scratch dough pizza every single game throughout the arena. So when we're down in the kitchen, man, we think like chefs, and that's what we do. We make great food, and we make sure that the fans get to enjoy that great food.
I know earlier you said it raises the standard for arena food. What does that mean in practice? Are we talking fresher, bolder, more soulful?
So one of the great things is we use some local purveyors. So like I said, the pizza dough is made from scratch every single day. We hand cut the fries, we smash the burgers, we roll and smash the burgers. So it really is just making sure that there is a farm to table component while understanding that you're through in the arena. So we want to make it fun, but not stuffy. So we were intentional with the things we've done. And we think they're going to be great for the season.
You talk about farm to table. Is this locally sourced? How are we going to make sure this tastes like Atlanta at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, man, we've got some Atlanta natives in the kitchen Mama told me what to do, and that's what we're doing.
At the end of the day, what do you hope fans walk away saying about the food, the experience, about everything when it comes to eating at State Farm Arena?
That we listened. We talked to the fans, we talked to the people that come into the stadiums. We have a really good group, starting with the leadership. So when people come in, it's not an afterthought. We're very intentional with the menus. We're very intentional where we serve things. We're really intentional and understanding that Atlanta is a very much food-savvy town, and people know what they want, people know what they should have and what they deserve. And at State Farm Arena, we want to make sure we are listening and delivering, right?
Chef, have you heard from any of your peers in the industry? Any other arenas jealous of what you're putting out there this year?
They like to hit Instagram and say, "We see you, we see you." That's right. We're doing it right, man. We're doing it right. We're going to the playoffs, and we're gonna make people full all the way.
As Melissa tears through the Caribbean, we're back to hearing about a landfall hurricane, a Category 5 storm. This category is from what's called the Saffir-Simpson scale. It ranges from 1 to 5 and is based on the sustained wind speeds. Now, a major hurricane is considered anything from a Category 3, 4, or 5. But that number doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't account for the rainfall amounts, flooding, storm surge, which often cases leads to most of that destruction. All right, we are looking at the atmospheric and oceanic folks down there. Welcome to the show, sir. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. What's your name?
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Zachary Hanlos. I'm a director of our undergraduate atmospheric oceanic sciences program here at Georgia Tech.
Gotcha. So thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate that. Your view is that we should probably update the scale, right?
Yeah, it's a complicated picture because historically we've used the Saffir-Simpson scale since about 1969. So it provides continuity in terms of, being able to understand how present hurricanes are rated versus past ones. However, the challenge is that the Saffir-Simpson scale only considers maximum wind speed. And certainly strong winds, like with Melissa, can be devastating and concerning. However, there are other hazards that come with this too. Inland flooding, storm surge, sometimes you can get tornadoes. And none of these are exactly factored into the Saffir-Simpson scale. So it may be worth, as a community, revisiting, do we need something that kind of incorporates all those 4 primary factors? Is there a way to communicate that in a scale that's kind of similar to the Saffir-Simpson scale?
So you're saying we're seeing more storms breaking that traditional model, right?
I think it's always been like that. It's just that the Saffir-Simpson scale, if you know something about the maximum wind speed, you can infer or correlate these other types of hazards. So with Melissa, for example, when people hear Category 5, they know, okay, this is going to be catastrophic. The winds are strong, but there's probably going to be strong storm surge, flooding, associated with that. But it's not technically encoded in the scale itself. In terms of, emergency management communicating to society, it could be interesting to have a scale that maybe more clearly notes these other factors. Because sometimes you get these stories where people say, oh, I've survived a hurricane before. Even though these winds are bad, we never get the worst of it. But all it takes is one bad event where maybe you finally do get the winds, or maybe it's the inland flooding that's more destructive than the winds itself. I think a lot about Helene for Atlanta last year, where we didn't really have the bad winds here. We had 11 inches of rain or so in 48 hours, and that led to devastating impacts in our area. And of course, much more rain, in the Western Carolinas, where they had over 30 inches of rain. So I think, long story short, having some sort of scale that communicates these other factors clearly to the public could be really beneficial.
So what does that hazard index that you mentioned look like when you talk about the scale?
Well, it doesn't exist yet. I think this is something that's very much in the brainstorming stage, and no one is really taking any initiative, to my knowledge, within academia, the private sector, the government sector. But you hear chatter around the meteorological community that, okay, so we have the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's pretty good. We've used it historically. However, is it worth creating an updated scale? Well, there's challenges to this. One is that if you throw more factors into the scale, how do you make sure people understand what all this means to be firing off pages of text to people? They may not have the time or capacity to read through this. So how do you make it into like a single number? Maybe it's like a color scale or something like that, where, green is, best case scenario, red is worst case scenario. These are all ideas that I think people could float around. The next challenge too is that who's going to take the lead or initiative to come up with a scale, something that everyone can agree on, something that's effective as a communication tool? And then is it something that we can actually use in forecasts moving forward?
Hey, that may be you. Maybe it's called the Hanloss scale. Zachary Hanloss, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. All right, the countdown is on. We're just 100 days away from the 2026 Winter Olympics, and no one here at 11Alive is more excited than Cheryl Preheim, who will be in Milan for the games. How exciting.
I am excited. I wish you were coming with me.
I don't know, it's cold.
We were in London together in 2012, which was fun, but this is a whole nother deal.
A whole nother
Olympics
deal.
Is totally different.
You've been preparing for a lot of these. You've been at a lot of Olympics. What's it like to feel like 100 days out?
You really start to feel the momentum, and you feel like the time is going fast. You know, all of the athletes are in make it happen mode right now. Some of them are already on their way to Europe because they're going to be competing ahead of the games. So they're all locked in, they're ready to go. We've been having so much fun just getting ready, not just with the athletes, but also with how it impacts our community here in Metro Atlanta.
Give us a sense of how you prep. I have some idea. I know we spent some very long days getting ready. When do you leave and how do you prep?
Should I just wear my weighted vest around my neighborhood? People like, she's getting ready for the Olympics. Because you carry all your equipment in your backpack. But I think the most fun part of prepping is, like, I know what you love is getting to know the athletes.
Oh yeah.
You spend time with the athletes, you spend time with their family and their team, which is so much fun. But the other thing we all love is you also get to lock in on all the youth leagues and the community leagues around hockey and figure skating, curling clubs, you know, just parts of our community that love these sports, and it's our chance to spend time with them and highlight those as well, which is really fun.
Oh yeah, sounds good. Now, what are some of the storylines you're going to be keeping an eye on?
Well, the biggest one for us here in Georgia, and really one of the biggest one in the country, is Alana Myers-Taylor.
Yeah.
She's a bobsled icon. She's a legend already. She's heading to her 5th Olympics. Born and raised in Douglasville, Georgia, and has broken so many barriers. She is the most decorated Black Winter Olympian of all time already. So whatever she does this time around is just even more of writing her story in the history books. But she's just an incredible person. She's so fun. She's down to earth. She's a mom of 2. She really has deep roots in Metro Atlanta. And she's so funny. You know, I've always asked her, what's it like to go in a bobsled? So, you know, you jump on the bobsled and you go down this ice track. And she said, oh, just think about it like jumping into a metal trash can and rolling down an icy hill. And that's how she describes it. But then ironically, she just mentioned to me for the first time, we've known each other for a long time, and she just drops this interesting fact that she hates roller coasters.
I absolutely hate roller coasters. Even though I'm a bobsled pilot, a lot of people are shocked to find that out, but in a bobsled, I am controlling it. In a roller coaster, I don't even know what's next. So that unpredictability I don't really like. When I'm going down in a bobsled ride, I know what's coming next.
It doesn't make sense to me. When you see that you know, bobsled, I mean, it seems like it's the same thing.
Totally.
But she's in control.
What makes sense to you, though, is she is so competitive.
Yeah.
And you know, it started in high school. So she went to Lithia Springs High School. So we want to shout out Lithia Springs, where it all started. She played soccer, basketball, track and field soccer. And it was really, she just decided she wanted to do the Olympics. And her dad actually said, what about bobsled? And that's how this all started. So our very first interview was in 2016. And at that point, she wasn't married. She didn't have kids. So we've watched her grow up in her whole life. Now she's a mom of 2 boys. We celebrated her 41st birthday together the last time we did an interview, just earlier this month. And she's like breaking so many barriers of being a mom, a woman in her 40s, and now a 5-time Olympian. She's unbelievable.
Beyond the games, the city itself, I mean, you know, historic places, iconic places, how much of that plays a role in all this?
Well, we really want to take you all along.
Okay.
You know, come on. But you don't have to pay for airfare or a hotel. So,
nice.
So everybody wins, right? But we want to show you. So we've already been researching, and we'll be showing you all of the great places. We'll be showing you the scenery and a little bit of the culture and all of that thing. So when you're watching 11Alive here, you'll get to experience all parts of it, not just sport, but really where we are in the world too.
And I think that's why so many of us in the newsroom and many other people see you there and get so jealous. But when you land there, you're running from day one.
Yes, we definitely do that. So it's, I think, 26 days straight, and the days are about 18 hours. I mean, talk about an adrenaline rush, though. It's the best reason to have a long day because it's just unity, it's the world coming together, it's sport at its best, it's people excited to be there. So it's all the right reasons to have long days, but just, you know, cut me some slack when I start to look a little haggard towards the end because it's a long run, but we love it so much. I really can't wait.
Let's say we have a thunderstorm, right? It drops some very heavy rain across the metro area. What happens next can be just as damaging as the storm itself. Storm water runoff floods streets and washes out streets, strains local infrastructure, and even carries pollutants into our rivers. Vic Engel joins us now. He serves as the managing director for North Georgia Metropolitan Water Planning District. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. For people who see water just running down the road, right? They may say, okay, well, that's just water and it goes into our storm drains. What exactly is storm water runoff and why does it matter so much here in Metro Atlanta?
Yeah, so we here at the Metro District, we're a regional water planning district, and we work with local governments, utilities, and other agencies to help manage our water resources. So that's storm water. You know, especially when it rains heavily, after a dry period, that water will just run right off. It carries, like you said, pollutants and other things. Now, that gets into our waterways, our lakes, and our rivers, which is also our water supply. So we work very closely. We have a really good plan in place to help manage that storm water and to manage our water supplies. But it is important for residents to know that when they leave pet waste in their yard or in the park, fertilizer, oils, things like that, that will wash off into the creeks and our lakes, and it's something that we have to be careful about.
Some probably would say that this is a natural thing. How do you manage it? Is it really on us as far as making sure that things around our homes are nice and clean?
Well, I would say it's a good idea. We encourage that here at the district for all residents. Short rain and runoff is a natural process, but of course development, and when we create what we call impervious surfaces, so driveways, roads, things like that, it accelerates that runoff and it exposes fertilizers and other things in our yards, on the streets, in the environment that is a byproduct of our development. And so, yes, it's a natural process, but we can also, if we're going to be good stewards of our water, we need to make sure that we try to keep that storm water as clean as we can.
Yeah, we saw it earlier in the week where we had that heavy rain. It washed out Forest Park Road in Clayton County. Talk to us about the cost that goes into the maintenance that happens when we get these heavy rains that push through the area.
Well, so the cost of stormwater can be significant in terms of damage to infrastructure, properties, the flooding that occurs, right, as well as the water quality issues that I mentioned. So it requires a lot of concentrated effort, dedicated effort from our local governments, our city planners, developers, and agencies to manage that stormwater, and it can be quite costly. Newer developments tend to have stormwater features built in according to new codes that have been developed. Older developments typically don't have some of these features in place, and so that's where we really need to pay attention to it, and that's where we are focusing on managing those stormwater volumes.
Before we go, my final take, up until now, it's been a somewhat quiet hurricane season. And we always tell you it only takes one storm to ruin a complete season. And it appears Melissa can be that one. The strongest storm to form this year so far, the strongest to ever make a direct landfall over the island of Jamaica. The hurricane will go down in history as one of only 2 hurricanes to make landfall with winds up to 185 miles per hour. The other storm was the 1935 Labor Day hurricane that hit the Florida Keys with 185 mile per hour winds. All right, it remains to be seen how destructive the storm will be, as residents and officials will be out in Jamaica and Cuba to assess all that damage. That's what they're doing right now, folks. And our hearts and our minds and our prayers go out to them. the only thing you can describe this as catastrophic. You're talking about 185 mile per hour winds over hours in the same spot. Yeah, it's going to be devastating, folks. So go ahead and brace yourself, and hopefully people fared okay. We'll be hearing more and more about the destruction and the devastation down in that particular area as the storm continues to climb up toward the Bahamas later on today. All right, make it a great day, folks. Try to encourage someone. We'll be back with more tomorrow on The Take.